All right, and we're back once again with the Pop Culture Cosmos. I'll tell you what, it's a very troubling time for the pro wrestling industry right now because a lot of people are speaking out, which is good, and that's leading to a lot of changes within the industry itself as a lot of, I don't want to say major names, but names that are now becoming recognizable in the industry because of AEW, All Elite Wrestling, and World Wrestling Entertainment having a lot of these wrestlers now that have been impacted by it, with a lot of changes now being made with firings, suspensions, things of that nature. But also underneath, as far as some of the smaller organizations like Shikara, like Progress, like Impact, like the NWA, a lot of those smaller organizations are being adversely affected because of the fact that, hey, there was some wrongdoings going on, and now it's being addressed by a lot of people that were treated terribly. Now speaking out, now having the strength and the power speaking out on social media, and it's causing a shift in a hopefully a better direction for the pro wrestling industry going forward. And here to talk with me about it today is a good friend of mine. You know him from the Hunnick Outcasts, and he's here a lot with us right here at the Pop Culture Cosmos. It is Noah Ian Fein back on the show. And Noah, before you come on, I want to thank you for taking the time to speaking to me on this subject because it was listeners that wanted to go ahead and bring this out. And obviously I checked into it, and sure enough, there's a big problem that's been going on, and I'm glad to see a lot of these people speaking out, about these wrongdoings as far as sexual misconduct and things of that nature. But I also wanted to tell you that I sent out feelers to wrestling podcasts that are out there, and also wrestling fans that are out there that wanted to come on the show. And if I'm talking a WrestleMania preview, oh, they'll all want to come on. But when it comes to something like this, they didn't want to come on. So I'm calling them out and telling them my disappointment for not coming on the show and not wanting to go ahead and themselves speak out on this issue. And I want to ask you, Noah Ian Fein, thank you first for joining us back on the show on such short notice. I want to hear your thoughts on this as far as the speaking out and how it's going to affect the industry going forward.
Well, I'm first of all, thank you for having me back on. Second of all, disappointed and disgusted is not the word. And I'm just going to say it that the fact that you have wrestling fans who are either in the industry or doing these podcasts that don't want to come on and talk to you about it, something seems to be a little rotten in Denmark with that. Sorry, but it's true. And as for some of these names that I'm familiar with, as well as another one that's not on this list, on your list that I researched on the other one, I don't know what to think. I mean, one of them for WWE for Matt Riddle. I don't know what it was with him. There was always, I don't want to say that there was always something skeevy about some of these guys, or something just over the years now we're getting these documentaries about what they were like backstage. I know that Shawn Michaels, people talk about what he was like backstage in the 90s to death, that he was pill popping and that he was inappropriate and blah blah blah. But things apparently have gotten worse from 1984 to present. It wasn't just in the 90s. It's been going on for years now. And I feel that at this point, it's always been discussed about having some sort of union, that these wrestlers are pretty much treated like circus animals, and they can't say anything because if they do, the attitudes from Vince McMahon seems to be, if you're not happy here, go somewhere else where you can be happy, and that's pretty much it. And that doesn't really solve the problem. And even if you kept quiet and you're awarded a championship belt for like a couple weeks, that doesn't make the problem go away.
Well, this is actually also, I want to go ahead and stress to you that a lot of these incidents happened on the independent scene. And I think that's a bigger indication right now. And you're right. Let's not go ahead and sweep the WWE under the rug on this, because there's been a lot of stuff that's been controversial that they've done over the course of the many years. But as a larger corporation, they are going to try and, I know, either sweep it under the rug as fast as they can or try and deal with it as fast as they can by either getting rid of the individuals. I mean, there's been several people affected by this as far as their jobs terminated, and in a lot of cases, rightly so. Let me give you the list right now of people that have been accused of this a type of either sexual misconduct or wrongdoing of some type in the speaking out movement. And WWE stars like Matt Riddle, Velveteen Dream, Jordan Devlin, Jack Gallagher, Ligero, Travis Banks, David Starr will no longer be working for Progress. Mark Paspera, he's gone from Progress, though it's a smaller organization that's out there. AEW, Darby Allin, Jimmy Havoc, and Sammy Guevara, they've all been accused, and some of them have had action taken against them by AEW. Impact, Joey Ryan has had several accusations, which actually, if you come to understand his character, is probably not that surprising. Dave Christ, they've both been terminated by Impact Wrestling. Shikara, the head of Shikara, which is a smaller organization, again, Mike Quackenbush, his company, he is no longer he ceased to do operations in and of itself, so he's terminated actually his company as of this point in time. Ring of Honor and NWA, a vice president with the company, I believe, Dave Lagana, he was accused and left the company. As far as the NWA Ring of Honor has been adversely affected as well. A lot of this to me stems from the lifestyle that they were leading in the recent years on the independent scene, because a lot of these actions happened on some of these while they're working for some of these smaller outlets. But I'm not going to go ahead and excuse AEW and also as well WWE, because these incidents were out there in rumors and innuendo and things of that nature. But WWE and AEW failed to follow up on these things before they hired some of these wrestlers. So I want to hear your thoughts on why they didn't go ahead and do the proper background, because if you do the proper background, you can avoid these type of scandalous things where these individuals are now working for your company and you just have to let them go because of the fact that, hey, they perpetrated some things in the past that were not so hunky-dory.
Well, here's the problem: is that if you're thinking of independent, what do you think about? You think about Mid South, or you think about Jersey. And I'm not going to go through my entire origin story, but when I was in Jersey for a while, I did work for a independent, and I can tell you right now, the trying to do a background check or even a drug test or anything, it takes both time and money. Nobody wants to be bothered doing it. And
But AEW and WWE, as well, with especially in the case of WWE, that's $1 billion company.
yeah, but those are $1 billion companies. I'm talking about like the Kraft macaroni and cheese or trying to become a name independent, where you have 5 guys or 20 guys in a locker room that all have to use a bucket instead of a toilet. I mean, I'm seriously, or a dressing room is literally outside where you have to put up a tent to change your gear. I mean, I'm talking like the bottom of the barrel to work your way up. The problem is that it just takes so much time and money, and nobody really wants to be bothered doing it. They're just like, okay, we have a crowd. We don't want to give the tickets back. We don't want to give the money back because we lose money. So you know what? Are you available to wrestle? Go. And you'll just be on a probation period, and we'll just watch you. Nobody complains about you. We're not going to say or do anything. And if you can wrestle and you can perform in the ring, we're fine with that. And some people turned a blind eye, and some people didn't care. And eventually, somebody got picked up or got injured and didn't want to be part of it anymore. It's not everybody, but there are so many controversies on why some of the independents just didn't want to be bothered at the time. And then the second problem was back then, between even then and now, not everybody has a camera phone out. There are still people that can duck, dodge, and cover from a camera phone. Big Brother's not always watching, especially if you're in the independent scene. And people can be clever, even with texting or in a locker room or whatever. It's amazing what people can get away with in the independents. So then it comes down to your word against mine. Yeah, you could say, but there are already witnesses. What are you going to do? And if a lot of people are playing it safe and smart, and just because somebody accuses you of sexual harassment, it's not like something with Harvey Weinstein where thank God he had like 50 some odd women coming out and all telling the same story. Independent is a little bit different. And if they don't have the money, what are you really going to do? Yeah, it would be great to stop these people, but unless they become famous, I feel nobody really wants to get involved because it's not as easy as you think. And then again, what are we going to do? Shut down the organization? The problem is it comes down to time, money, and research. And when it comes to independence, people just don't want to be bothered and involved, and that's sickening. You have something like WWE and AEW, they have high priced lawyers, they have better equipment, so they have a better idea, and they have more guys that are a little bit more loyal and are not going to pay attention to the stuff that happened 20 years ago because they still a lot of them have families and a lot of them have their reputation. It's different than something. If you go to any independent organization, not much has changed. It's trying to change a little bit more now, but I don't know how safer people are going to be other than just picking up and going to another organization. And lots of luck with that too.
Well, I'll tell you what, my friend, it's something that, yeah, I understand if you're running a organization from a shoestring budget that you're at a local high school, it's going to be you can't do any background checks of that nature, but you hear stuff. You hear stuff in the rumorville, and you can, as a promoter, go ahead and say, you know what, I may or may not want you because of those things. I can go ahead and lean against it because of some of the stuff I hear out there. You can make choices if you really, really want to. But I have a feeling this is going to transform the independent scene, which has been in need of being transformed for quite some time. I mean, going back to the old regional days when there were a plentiful amount of small wrestling organizations, some of them viable, some of them more viable than others. There was something going on all the time as far as the smaller scenes. But of course, the rise of the WWE knocked a lot of those guys out of the water, put a lot of those guys out of business, and the amount of independent organizations that were not WWE and at the time WCW have shrunk. And I understand that there's not that as many options that are out there, but still, this is going to go ahead and change the way independent companies are run, independent companies are dealing with as far as with when they deal with wrestlers out there. This is the way that is going to be changing, and I think it's going to be for the good because now the individuals that are being hurt by this, as far as the people that were hurt by this initially, that these wrestlers, if they actually did what is said was it, then they're now going to have a better work environment for themselves, and that's ultimately what's going to help the wrestling industry as a whole, because this rock and roll wild lifestyle that many of these wrestlers were accused of having and doing during their years on the independent scene, maybe they'll go ahead now and have a second look at that, because you cannot go ahead and perpetrate those kinds of things in these days and age on social media without it coming back on you.
Well, you know what? I got rid of my Twitter for reasons, but it's not the reasons you think. It's just that Twitter can either make or break your life. I don't say anything controversial on there. The only thing I ever used Twitter for was to promote my podcast. That was it. I keep politics out of it. I keep personal life out of it. That's all that I do with Twitter. The same thing goes with Facebook, except every now and then post a meme or something. But I don't know why people are just with the arrogance. My major concerns go back to, again, because it's retro, and I don't know if one has anything to do with the other. There was a documentary series, Dark Side of the Ring, and they talked about the whole Jimmy Snuka incident, which is still controversial to this day. It was a great documentary, and the same thing goes with Dino Bravo as well. But the problem,
They've had 3 great seasons on that show. I highly recommend anybody, if they're a professional wrestling fan, to go ahead and check it out. It doesn't always tell you the whole story because they have to confine it within the spans of an hour,
yeah,
but there's still some great stuff contained within the Dark Side of the Ring on virtually all their episodes.
yeah, and I know they're working on another season as well, thank God. But my point being is that I'm more concerned about what happened from the time Vince McMahon Jr. stepped in till now, because I kind of wonder what blind eye he's turning. Um, with AEW, it goes back to AEW feels like WCW 2.0, where if you're not happy in the WWE, you're going to go over to AEW. And I know there's a lot of wrestlers are going over there. That you have Hart and you have Jake Roberts, and I don't know there's just something. I don't think it's just not just backstage politics. And I still go back to the whole Miss Elizabeth incident as well. I mean, I know that a lot of stuff happened after she left both WWE and WCW, but I kind of wonder. There's now that you have more divas, and divas have been brought back, and then now WWE female superstars because you don't have the divas title anymore. How a lot of them feel because you have a lot of young guys and you have a lot of attractive women, and I'm sure that again it becomes very uncomfortable in both those locker rooms. My understanding is they have one, the men have one, the women have one. That's great, but sometimes things just happen. There's a lot of fraternizing, and then things just don't go well as planned. And then, well, this one did this and this one said that. I don't think there's enough control. I don't know what they could do other than not turn the blind eye. I don't know who's going to be held responsible for those organizations. But when it comes to the independents, and that's it. I mean, it's these
Well, I think
ones.
it's a weeding out process, my
Well,
friend.
it's a
I
meeting
think.
process, but the thing is, though, is that it's going to cost a lot of money. So, I think what's really going to happen is if the fans take note of this, I think unfortunately, a lot of these independent circuits are going to go the way of the dodo again. I didn't even know a lot of them still existed. Truth be told, I didn't know that. I don't know if Mid South is still around. I don't know if no, I mean, Crockett, of course, I know is no longer around. I didn't know if Mid South. I don't even know what's going on in Japan or Canada anymore. Truth be told, I'm kind of curious what's going on over there, because I know that Jacques Rougeau had a organization. I don't know what's going on, um, with Toronto or Montreal. I'm really kind of curious what is happening overseas, but I guess time is only going to tell. They must do things a lot differently over there anyway, but I would be curious to see what's really happening more. Like, how is Vince McMahon going to talk his way out of this one now? Because this has always been something that he's had his lawyers, and he's always talked his way out of a situation. I don't know how he's going to talk his way out of this one now, because now it's just going to be even more controversial.
Well, most of these incidents, outside of, I believe, Sammy Guevara, who was working as a developmental wrestler at the time, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and spoke out against Sasha Banks and said something extremely inappropriate. There's not much of this happened in the WWE. But as these accusations took place about what these wrestlers did before their time, in the most part, for the WWE or AEW, most of these wrestlers have been terminated, suspended, and have had some serious actions dealt against them appropriately by the companies involved, WWE and AEW, because they want no part of it. The only thing I'm saying is going forward in the future, this is going to lead to more change within the independent scene, but also with the larger companies like All Elite Wrestling and the World Wrestling Entertainment. They're going to go ahead and do a little bit more research, whether it's social media research, whether it's background checks more extensively. I mean, they cannot go ahead and just bring people in blindly like they have in the past and continue to do so, even up to this day. They really got to go ahead and do more extensive background checks on some of these guys, because you put somebody in a position that you're going to start giving them a push, and then all of a sudden these accusations are made, and if you find out they're true, it really hurts your company overall. So that's why you got to go ahead and spend that extra money. I mean, we see NBA, NFL, we see Major League Baseball, we see these companies, major organizations, and these teams spend extra money to do background checks. I think at this point in time, the WWE and AEW have to go ahead the same route.
Yeah, but let me just say this. With the background checks, I think it also came down to, unfortunately, it was with WWE and AEW. I think it was Triple H and Shawn Michaels that had a lot of pull. They were bringing people in because of word of mouth. And I'm not saying they were 100% at fault or they're 100% responsible, whatever the case may be, but they did say, let's bring these guys in. And AEW were like, oh, you're not happy in WWE, come on in. And that's, unfortunately, that's something you cannot do. And I think now, yeah, you're right. Maybe social media is going to be a big deal at this point because everybody's on Twitter and Facebook or on YouTube. So Yeah, it's going to take a lot of time, but I don't see it any other way. Unless they're $1 million. I don't know how much AEW is making at this point. I'm not too sure if they're up there with Vince at this.
Well, no, they're not up there with Vince yet. Obviously, the WWE has much more established in place, but again, it's a situation where there's a lot of egg on the faces of a lot of these organizations right now, and seemingly it's something that they're going to have to address more aggressively in the future going forward because you cannot have a workplace with individuals who act the way that they do or have in the past. And in the case of these smaller organizations, they're just going to go ahead and have these issues come up again and again and again and again. Seemingly every year, this will probably happen where another wrestler did something wrong or inappropriate in the past. It's going to come back to haunt him or her, and unfortunately, they're going to be let go because of it. And could be someone in a major spot, and that's the thing you want to go ahead and prevent is having these wrestlers put in a major spot and having to go ahead and terminate them because of something they did inappropriately in the past. And like I said, it just happens to be where, to me, it's going to become to a situation again where the independent scene, as if you're a wrestler getting into that scene, you're going to have to understand everything that you're doing now will affect your future going forward. And if you don't understand the way how to act now, it's going to cost you when or if you strike it rich later on.
No, I agree with you, but you know, if I wasn't already invested, and in all honesty, I don't really know when AEW is even on. I haven't really watched the pay-per-views. I have the WWE streaming service. I'm going back and I'm watching past shows and everything. I'm really not too up to date with today's superstars, as they're called. But they're gonna, if Vince does retire and if Triple H and Stephanie are taking over the business, and I don't even know if they are anymore, what the hell is going on. But if they do, they really are going to have to, instead of worrying about pressing daddy, are going to really have to sit down and revamp the entire organization. Again, I don't know who's really in charge of AEW. I don't know if it's Jim Ross. I think he's just an announcer. He has a lot of say in it, though, in his podcast, so I'm not too sure what he's really doing behind the scenes on that. I know he did a lot of behind the scenes in WWE, so I'm not really too sure what he's doing there. But past all of it, though, it's so repetitious of what you say and what you're supposed to say and how you're supposed to conduct yourself, and then you're supposed to be a mentor and you're supposed to be a role model. And you say, I mean, I could sugar, I could talk about this to death, and I don't want to sugarcoat it. But you know what? It's not just in professional wrestling. It's been with baseball and football and every other major sport, and even in every it's going on with YouTube celebrities and it's going on with Hollywood celebrities and TV celebrities. It's getting to a point now where it's just like becoming ridiculous and disappointing because a lot of these people are just letting me down. And I'm developing a disappointment disorder over this. But at the end of the day, I don't know what's going to make it any better. I think the only way it's going to make it better in WWE, Vince is just going to have to step down at this point. I think he's just turning a blind eye one too many times and depending on his lawyers. He just is not focused the way that he used to be. And I think, again, Stephanie and Triple H should really, in real life, take over. Again, AEW, who's ever, you know. And as for the independents, all you got to do is everything is going to get shut down and a lot of people that are not at fault are going to lose their jobs, and this is their lifestyle. And you're just going to screw with a lot of innocent people's careers over this. And it's
Well,
going to,
again, it just it's how you conduct yourself.
yeah,
If it's like in real life, like if you're out there working any other job. I mean, some of the stuff, if it really happened and it comes back to haunt you, you're going to be terminated from the company that you work for. Same thing in wrestling. I mean, if this stuff happens on the independent scene, which in the most cases this has, it's going to come back to get you every time. And in the days of social media, in the days of now where everything gets documented, everything gets remembered, you're just going to go ahead and have to live with it. And if that's the case, you made those mistakes. You know what? You're going to have to pay for it at some time down the road. So.
Yeah. You know what? I have nothing else to say about this because it's just disappointing. If it's not one thing, it's another. I mean, I'm not saying the Me Too movement didn't help because it did. Trust me, I know that it did. But it's just getting to a certain point where nobody's really learned their lesson on this. And but then again, this is also retro. I mean, again, I know I'm repetitious on this, but I feel this goes back 30 somewhat years till now. So this is nothing new. It's just that it's coming out more now than then because there's more evidence now and more people are speaking out now, hence the hashtag. And I don't think it's just because people are making more money, but I think it's just because A, they don't want to get away with it, but if you're making more money, then this way you can hire better lawyers to take care of the issue. And the ones that are making more money that caused the problem are going to have to spend legal fees and just it's going to screw them anyway because it's still costing them their livelihood and their money because when all is said and done, nobody's going to hire them when they find them to be guilty. So it's all about karma, I suppose.
It is all about karma, and unfortunately, it's going to happen to a lot more people, I think, going forward in the professional wrestling industry as more and more comes out. As more and more people become a lot braver about speaking out, actually, hashtag speaking out. And it looks like the industry for professional wrestling is going to go forward with a lot of changes. A lot of the independent scene is going to have to reevaluate itself as organizations, small or big. Actually, the professional wrestling as a whole is going to have to look at itself and how it conducts itself and how it looks at its wrestlers and its participants going forward from both a large standpoint with the WWE and AEW and also smaller organizations, how they conduct themselves as well. So it's going to probably make what I hope will be a positive change for the better, and I'm looking forward to seeing better quality product in the long run and wrestlers that can conduct themselves and don't have those sordid paths as we're hearing right now during the speaking out movement. So 5-10 years down the line, I'm hoping to get the residual benefits from that, and I'm hoping the industry does as well. Well, Noah, cannot thank you enough for stopping by. Again, I truly appreciate you taking the time to doing so. You've been such a great guest for us each and every time. Check out everything that he's doing today at Hunnikween and the Hunnick Outcasts. It's Noah Ian Fein. Thank you for speaking out yourself.
I got that. I do want to say one last thing, though. I'm not going to mention this person because we talked about this off air, but I know this person's just doing podcasting now and was part of the industry. But if we ever do talk about said individual, um, if the allegations are true, I am kind of not only disappointed, but it's scary because it's the person the least likely to do this. I mean, I'm sure more names are going to be popping up. I'm sure it's not just these individuals. I have a feeling a lot more retroactively will come about. But it's just, I mean, we could do this for another 3 hours if it was unfiltered. And I'm sure this is a family podcast, so I'm going to keep it filtered and I'm going to keep it family friendly. But if other individuals do come out somehow, I guess with your permission, I'm going to do it solo because I do a more R-rated series, not so family friendly, and I'll do a disclaimer because I have a feeling we're not done yet with the list. Not by a long shot.
I have a feeling you're right as well. We're not done with this list. As more people speak out for the things that have gone on in the past, and we're going to hear more things going on within the professional wrestling industry. There's going to be more changes, hopefully for the better, being made in the professional wrestling industry as more people speak out on the injustices that go on or that have gone on in their lives in regards to what's going on right now within the professional wrestling industry. A lot of changes being made in the professional wrestling industry as we speak. And hopefully this is a positive sign going forward for the pro wrestling industry and eventually the product that you're going to see down the road. Noah, I cannot thank you enough for stopping by. Truly appreciate you being once again part of the pop culture cosmos.